Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting Australian Indian Radio and Brisbane Indian Times daily Facebook live update. And it's a beautiful day once again out there. It's not very bright today, but well, welcome to the show on Tuesday, the 8th of September. And it's wonderful to have your company as usual. How's your day going so far? Well, first of all, let's take a look at what today has in store for us weather-wise. With that, we'd like to welcome Dilraj.
Good morning, everyone. Weather for today will be maximum 24 degree. Brisbane area is partly cloudy with 5% chances of rain. Wind southeasterly 15 to 25 km per hour, tending easterly in the middle of the day, then becoming light in the evening. Fire danger is low to moderate. Sun protection is recommended till 2:50 p.m. UV index is predicted to reach 7, that is high. Till tomorrow, stay safe and have a good day. Thank you.
Wonderful, and it's good to see that it's a beautiful day out there. Well, right now let's go straight into the news for today. And first of all, let's take a look at the headlines. What's making headlines for this Tuesday, the 8th of September?
Pressure to speed up its rollback of tough lockdown restrictions. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says he hopes the Andrews government's plan for a gradual easing of restrictions in the southern state is a worst-case scenario. He's also questioned the efficacy of the State Health Department's contact tracing system. The Deputy Prime Minister has been challenged for claiming a key cause of Victoria's second wave was a Black Lives Matter protest in Melbourne. On Q&A last night, Michael McCormack said along with hotel quarantine failures, the rally can't have helped in the spread of the virus. Labor's Christina Keneally slammed the claim, calling it an alternative fact. After the exchange, Mr McCormack accepted there was no evidence to suggest a link between the protests and the second wave. A search is continuing for two men reported to be missing in a wooden fishing boat in waters off South Australia. The pair left Coffin Bay near Port Lincoln on Thursday evening. They were last heard from on Friday night when they told a friend they were diverting to Kangaroo Island because of problems with the boat's propeller. And Tasmanians have snapped up more than 20,000 government-funded travel vouchers less than an hour after they were offered online. The $7.5 million voucher program aims to bolster the state's pandemic-struck tourism industry by providing rebates for accommodation and experiences. It was fully subscribed in 40 minutes, leaving many would-be travellers disappointed, but the government hasn't ruled out extending the scheme.
And amazing to see that kind of take-up on any project that's been put forward by the government. Obviously, that has been very well thought of. So, it's been taken up in the first 16 minutes. Wow. Well, right now, let's take a look at some of those numbers. Queensland, 1,133, with the recovery rate of 1,089, recorded deaths 6. And Australia-wide, 26,322, recovery 22,598, 762 recorded deaths. Worldwide, it's not 23, it's now 27.2 million. That's correct, 27.2 million, and the recovery rate is 18.2 million with 890k deaths. So that's the total numbers at the moment. Well, right now here in Queensland, the Ipswich Hospital outbreak grows. And in Sydney, the Sydney medics await the results. PM leads an attack on Victoria's roadmap to the restrictions. And Daniel Andrew rejects leadership questions. So all those coming up in the news straight away. So welcome to Tuesday, 8th of September. The federal government is increasing pressure on Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews to speed up the timeline on his coronavirus roadmap. The state yesterday saw the lowest case numbers in 10 weeks, with 41 new infections and 9 deaths. Meanwhile, a cluster of cases in Queensland continues to grow, and hundreds of Sydney medics are awaiting results after another hospital doctor was diagnosed. So in brief, South East Queensland Hospital outbreak grows. That's the one in Ipswich, and Sydney Hospital workers await the results. And Prime Minister Scott Morrison leads the criticism of Daniel Andrews' plan. All of those coming up in the news. But first of all, let's hear from our Prime Minister.
Australia is in the leading pack of countries in the world today for how we are protecting Australians' health and protecting their livelihoods. That is the clear, objective assessment of countries all around the world, with countries like South Korea, economies like Taiwan and others, who are managing this best in the world today. And we can take some encouragement from that, and we can take some hope from that. And the other thing Australians can take hope from today is that their government, their Australian government, their federal government, is providing hope through a sovereign vaccine plan which will keep Australia right up the front.
A sovereign back plan, and that is what the Prime Minister is planning. Well, when you look at the Prime Minister, we're trying to find time to do everything that needs to be done. And as we know, he loves cooking and he loves those curries. So we have seen, how he gets into the curries, and he's tried some different recipes. But when duty calls, you have to be out there. But of course, you cannot neglect your family. And in doing so, on the lighter note, let's join Prime Minister on the Father's Day as he got together to put up a cubby house. I don't know about his building skills, but let's have a look at that video.
G'day, I'm here with Lily.
Hi.
And we are here to build a cubby house today. And here we go. We've been to Bunnings and we've got all the wood.
All the wood.
We've measured it all out.
And all the power tools.
Yep. And the hammers, and we're all ready to go. This is quite a family project. You ready, Lil?
Yep.
Excellent. Got the little bits and pieces. We're going to make windows as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We'll put those on the front and all the rest of them. And maybe one of those sort of Mr. Ed doors. You know, the ones that have a top and a bottom?
Yep.
I reckon that'll be fun. We've got the roof trusses in, or whatever they're called.
Trusses or whatever they're called.
Go back on the tools, new weekend, been back up to Bunnings.
And we have done...
We've lost Lil down the back there. Where she is? Here she is.
He's done well with that power saw. Now, there's not many countries in the world where you can see the Prime Minister of the country, building up a little cubby house all by himself with the children. So it's wonderful to see. So that is what Australia is about. The hierarchy goes out the door. You have to do what you have to do, and everyone does their own things. So, that's what's so great about Australia. Well, right now, let's listen from our Premier.
Just the uncertainty of what's going on. It's all go and then it's all off again.
The whales are putting on a show during their migration off the Gold Coast. Tourists on Anthony Ardern's boat are in the box seat.
And look right here, right next to us. So here's the whales popping up, nice round out dive there.
The start of the COVID-19 pandemic hit Anthony's business hard. But by June, interstate tourists were starting to come back. That all changed in early August when Queensland slammed its border shut for the second time.
So we're carrying around about 600 people per day. That's now dropped back down to around about 100 per day. Pre-COVID, we're actually doing around about 1,200 customers per day.
It is relentless. It is intimidating, but I will not be intimidated.
Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk has been under sustained pressure from the federal and New South Wales governments to change her tough border stance. In the latest development, National Cabinet, including Queensland, has agreed to look at reopening borders by Christmas. But there are serious differences on what a definition of a hotspot should be.
I think she's still got the confidence of the electorate, but at some point the Queensland electorate's going to get its back up. So the Queensland electorate does not want to go into 2021 with continued lockdowns.
Queensland has the country's highest unemployment rate at 8.8%, but there are fewer than 30 active COVID cases. The looming state election at the end of October will test the popularity of border closures at the ballot box.
It can really cut either way at this stage. It is an enormous risk.
I think it's a really smart decision. I mean, the last thing we need is people rushing up here to try and get away from Victoria.
The Sunshine State's success in controlling coronavirus is a major reason it's lured this year's AFL Grand Final away from Melbourne.
Thanks, Miles.
It's good news for Damien Masters, who runs this pub next to the Gabba Stadium.
Pretty hard to compensate for 3 months of zero revenue, but yeah, it's certainly going to help.
The Grand Final will host 30,000 fans at a time the border remains shut, raising questions about whether the Queensland government's COVID-safe message is consistent.
The borders are closed so that we can have 30,000 people at the game. You know, I think if we open the borders, it puts having the AFL Grand Final and having a near full Gabba puts that massively at risk.
You know, having 30,000 plus people is a big ask to maintain those basic things we need to do to minimise the risk of COVID spreading from person to person.
Peter Collignon, a professor of infectious diseases at the ANU's medical school, is critical of Queensland's approach. In particular, he disagrees with the health advice, which requires no community transmission for a month before borders reopen.
I actually think that's a hard ask, almost an impossible ask, and it actually and I think it's not reasonable. I think what is reasonable is high levels of people, or areas where there's high levels of transmission should not be able to go to low levels of transmission. So Melbourne going to Queensland would be unreasonable at the moment. But when you've got really low levels, such as New South Wales, and particularly northern New South Wales, to not be able to go into Queensland or the ACT, I don't think that really makes biological sense.
Western Australia's Premier Mark McGowan is going it alone, refusing to sign up to the goal of reopening by Christmas.
All I'm trying to do is protect our state, save people's lives and save our jobs and keep us on the pathway we're on. I think I'm on the right track.
The Premier's position is popular at Fremantle markets, even amongst vendors who are suffering.
I don't vote Labor, but I'd vote that guy in, to be honest with you. I like what he's doing, but a little bit less money is better than being dead, I think.
As a person that lives in Western Australia, I think we're very lucky, but there is that conflict that, as a business person, I could do with the borders open.
Hey folks, how's it going today?
Back on the Gold Coast, tourism operator Anthony Ardern is hoping borders will reopen by Christmas. When they do, he wants the hotspot definition relaxed.
Start doing COVID hotspots for specific suburbs, not for the whole state. If we see that Sydney's actually performing really well and there's places in Western Sydney that do have outbreaks, why not look at actually closing off those places which have the outbreaks, but allow everyone else to actually still travel.
So there you are, all the different views there, but I think the Western Australia Premier is doing quite well, and I think from all the feedback from the vendors there. They say even though we're getting less money in our shops, but it is better than being dead. And everyone's backing his plan of saying, no, we're not going to open our borders until everything's, hunky-dory. But, those kind of decisions are tough decisions, but I think he is doing it right. So each state, should be open, and they should open their businesses a little bit more, but not allow people from across the border. But inside, all the towns and territories, everything should be open. Of course, with, that way the economy can start moving. People can start visiting, shops, restaurants and other things. But of course, with all precautions, and of course, they should have measurements at the entry points. So that way it could be better managed, and even the local people buy local, live local, do what you need to do locally. And now on the other matter of IFL, 30,000 people at the Gabba. I know we are part of a community organization, and that organization was trying to get tickets to, to probably shout the members who are coming to a function, tickets to that. But it was very hard to get the tickets, and they are not cheap as well. So 30,000 people, how is Queensland going to manage that social distancing? That would be something that we'll need to see. But right now, people are all saying, both sides of the fence. Some are saying it's a good thing that it will, for the first time ever, IFL Grand Final is happening right here in our backyard. But others are complaining. And as you heard from that health official, that he is not 100% sure if the safety measures and the social distancing measures could be, practiced in a crowd of 30,000 plus. Well, time will tell. Right now, what we have seen so far in Melbourne. So let's see, how has life changed in Melbourne under the lockdown? The emptiness just says it all, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Well, right now, did you watch the Q&A last night? Well, it was very, very volatile as we had seen. And let's take a look at that Q&A yesterday and how our deputy got grilled for saying that the Black Lives Matter protest added to the cluster. Well, let's go to that explosive interview.
When the second wave occurred, they were the three reasons that were given. It was the security failure. It was the family that gathered in too large numbers, and people who attended a rally was said to be.
I'm not sure there's any actual evidence that the Black Lives Matter protest led to this outbreak, though.
Well, that's what was being said at the time.
But do you accept that you were wrong in saying that just now?
No, I don't. I don't think people should be protesting actually at the moment.
I'm sorry.
In any way, shape or form.
I'm just testing you on a fact, though. You have put forward that the Black Lives Matter protest in Melbourne led to this outbreak. I do not believe that's supported by fact. There were a number of cases of people that had COVID there, but there is no evidence supporting that led to this.
And given the fact that the public health officials in Victoria, their tracking and tracing was not what it should be, who knows? They don't know themselves. So if there were people at that rally with COVID-19, and that has since been proven that they did have COVID-19 when they went to that protest, they should not have been at that protest, and nor should the protest have been.
Did not lead to this outbreak.
And you know, police resources have been used unjustly. They should have been doing what their job is, and that is to ensure that law and order is being kept, rather than have to attend and babysit a group of protesters who shouldn't have been protesting in the first place.
So there you go, that very explosive interview on Q&A last night, and being put on a very, very tough position right there, and the journalists as well, of course, being quite persistent. Well, now to Victoria, and leadership is not about doing what's popular, the Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews says. He says it's doing about what's right. It's not what's very popular and doing what's right. Let's listen to his reasoning on that point.
Premier, thanks for joining us.
Very good to be with you.
Victorians are facing a long and a tough road out of these lockdowns. Why is the Victorian government effectively pursuing a strategy that is close to eradication when other states, like New South Wales, are getting by simply by suppressing the virus?
Well, given the amount of community transmission, the amount of mystery cases that we have now and we've seen in Victoria, we need to get these numbers down to very low levels so that we can be confident that when we open up in a safe and steady way, we can stay open. It's really difficult to make comparisons with other states because in many respects the circumstances we face, the challenge that we face is very, very different.
Premier, you've set these very high thresholds to move through these stages. For instance, there needs to be a statewide average of fewer than 5 cases over a 14-day period before retail reopens to some extent, before people other than singles can visit other people's homes. Are you worried this is too strict? Because the Prime Minister today made the point that under the current arrangements, Sydney too would also be under curfew.
Well, I don't think it would be because Sydney's not had the amount of community transmission that we've had. So I don't think that's a particularly valid comparison and not a particularly worthwhile one. We're not in New South Wales. We've got a set of unique circumstances that apply to Victoria and a roadmap to safely and steadily ease out of these current rules, these current restrictions, to find a COVID normal, to open up and to stay open. The key point here is that in the last month we've gone from 725 cases about a month ago, 41 cases today. So we are seeing very significant reductions in the number of people who've got this virus, the chains of transmission, mystery cases. The strategy's working, but if you open up too much too early, you don't stay open for long, Michael, and that's not what we want.
Have you modelled how many businesses in Victoria will now go under as a result of these extended restrictions?
Well, there's no question that there's significant pain and there's a real challenge there, we know that. We'll have more to say about business support. This is about saving lives and it's also about saving livelihoods, because the point here, Michael, is the notion of spending the rest of this year and pretty much all of 2021 bouncing in and out of lockdowns every 4 weeks or so. There can be no economic recovery until we deal with the health issue. So you've got to do this in a sequential and logical way, and that's exactly the plan that we've outlined.
I get the health imperative, but there's surely going to be pain here. I'll ask that question again. Have you modelled how many businesses will go under as a result of this plan?
There's a whole lot of modelling. In terms of trying to be definitive about those sorts of questions, that's very, very challenging. Of course, we have to meet all the targets that we have laid out. We need to have more to say, and we will soon, about the business support that we will offer to business. And I just want to be really clear, we will spend these next few days, this next week or so, consulting in a very detailed way with different sectors to craft a package of support that, in their judgment, meets their needs. It's not about...
And so he's rightfully said that he will be looking at measures that will help those businesses. And as Michael was asking, does he have an exact number of businesses that would go under as a result of this lockdown? Well, so, very hard and tough questions there as well. But right now, moving on, when he mentioned about the remarks by a Prime Minister. And so here's what the Prime Minister had to say on the same situation that Premier Daniel Andrews was talking about. Here's his point of view.
The plan that was outlined yesterday, I hope, is a worst-case scenario. I see it as a starting point in terms of how this issue will be managed in the weeks and months ahead in Victoria. We will continue to carefully review this plan. We're yet still to receive the detailed modelling. We've seen the high-level modelling and the other assumptions that have gone into the plan. But what I can't help but be struck by is that under the thresholds that have been set in that plan, Sydney would be under curfew now. Sydney doesn't need to be under curfew now. They have a tracing capability that can deal with outbreaks. That's why I say it's important that we work on building that tracing capability in Victoria to get it at a level that enables it to move in a more confident way than I think the plan that was announced yesterday set out.
So that's the Prime Minister's view on that same situation and the same scenario. Of course, being from the two different parties of two different states, of course, that comes into the play there as well. But they've both got their own point of views right there. Well, right now, let's take a very quick commercial break before we go up into the ending part and, of course, all the upcoming events.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globnetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 सैंडगेट रोड, बुंदल, क्वींसलैंड। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, रियल एस्टेट इज अवर वर्ल्ड।
And real estate is the world. And right now, let's take a look at the functions and events that are taking place. Remember that a lot of them are taking place virtually, or they are like webinars. There you are, ladies and gentlemen, all the upcoming functions and events. And just to let you know that this month's edition, September's edition of Brisbane Indian Times, will be going to press tonight. Yes, wonderful to hear that. And will be out in circulation by this weekend. So pick up your copy from your nearest outlet. If you have problems getting copies under this current conditions, please do contact us and we'll guide you as to where you can pick up your physical hard copy as well. Because, apart from going online, we still putting out the hard copies as we have always done. So this month's issue has got quite a lot in it. There's so much reading in it. There's so many different functions and events that have been covered. A lot of articles that have been covered, a lot of interviews that we have conducted right here on this studio that have been covered in the current issue. And of course, it's leading on to Diwali. So, contact Charita Deshpande if you need to get your ads in for the Diwali issue, which will be the bumper issue coming out. Well, right now, let's go to the finishing segment of today's news. And first of all, we're going to look at, the transmission. And Dr. Chen says that she's concerned about contaminated surfaces that may be causing the transmission. Okay, we are maintaining physical distance, but someone has just, someone with the COVID infection has touched some surface and is just left, and next person comes and touches that. So what happens there? So how do we maintain that? As I said, in this building, the gym is open. I've started going back to the gym, but I go with a fresh pair of gloves every day, chuck it out before coming out of the gym. So, things like that. So you need to take a little precautionary measures to make sure that, infection is not passed on. But let's hear from the doctor.
We're obviously very keen to look at how transmission occurred in these settings. I can assure you that the staff, the ED healthcare worker was wearing masks and had full personal protective equipment when patient encounters, and was wearing a surgical mask at all other times. I think this just highlights the fact that we are exploring avenues of whether there could be fomite transmission. So what that means in lay terms is if your hands are contaminated and then you're touching computer screens or touching pens and pencils, pieces of paper, can you actually transmit the virus? And the way that the mechanism that could occur is if someone has contaminated their hands, touched those items, and then inadvertently the person who has again got their hands contaminated touches their eyes or mouths or adjusts their masks or plays with their face. And whilst that may sound something like we don't do, I was just pausing myself over there because it's actually very hard to never touch your face. And sometimes when you've got masks on, you also adjust it when they feel uncomfortable or just readjust them. So I think we need to continue to investigate how this transmission occurred, but that's just some of the thinking that we're investigating, because at the moment for some of the...
So it's day one today of the daycare's being closed, and I've been trying to start...
Looks like we lost doctor there, but anyway, the point that he was trying to make there is that if we are touching surfaces that has been touched by a contaminated patient, we run the risk of getting the virus or getting contaminated. Well, how far is too far, and of course, what she said about not touching the face, guilty as pronounced. I can't keep my hands away. You get a little twitch in the corner of the eye or the ear, or so you do that, and you don't even realize that you are doing that. So that's what happened. But right now, the going out story, the last story for today is we'll hear from people in Melbourne, residents in Melbourne, and what their experiences have been of the lockdown, what they have been doing during lockdown.
Hello, so it's day one today of the daycare's being closed, and I've been trying to study all day.
In the first days of stage 4, the reality of lockdown hit hard.
I had a really strong emotional response to it. I felt overwhelmed and really down.
It feels like there's no time to think, to breathe, and to process all that's going on.
My mama works in a hospital as a midwife when she gets home, but she has to shower and wash all her clothes straight away and wipe down all the keys and the passes before we can even give her a hug.
I'm feeling worried that the 6-week lockdown isn't going to be enough.
In week 2, that worry seemed justified.
There's an additional 17 fatalities since our last update.
Numbers were still high, so was anxiety.
You go to drive to do the shopping, there's always someone without a mask, there's always someone that's doing something stupid, and it's just like, do you have any idea what we're going through?
So you can't go out and provide, do any kind of volunteering or support. That's hard.
Hundreds of thousands of students were also struggling to adjust.
I am really moody. Like at one moment I'll be cranky and then I'll be sad and then I'll be cranky again and then I'll be happy.
I know that for me and for a lot of other Year 12 students, finding the motivation to study by ourselves has been a real struggle.
I don't think my parents have coped very well with this.
No, what day is it?
Thursday. This is Turnitin's Day.
This is where I'm at. I don't know what day it is anymore.
Sarah Golding juggles work as a crisis counsellor with caring for 2 boys, including a 10-year-old with autism.
I worry about the regression. I worry about the progress that we had made. And I worry about that going backwards and having to redo all that.
By week 3, the mental health toll of lockdown was showing up in the number of calls to Beyond Blue's coronavirus hotline. 3/4 came from Victoria.
Currently, you can see how people are very edgy, people are very sensitive, people are very antsy.
They are anxious, they are frightened, they are angry, and you can feel it in the air wherever you go.
While many found this lockdown much harder than the first, some families found silver linings.
We've had to be inventive and creative and really generate our own fun.
That's what I want to do, just balance like that.
What we found that really worked was to actually put time aside for the kids rather than trying to juggle work and caring for the kids at the same time.
So much food.
At the end of week 3, Victoria's coronavirus numbers were tracking down, but were still in the hundreds.
There is something about being, coming into sort of the halfway point that has helped a little bit with the mental health.
I just feel like these stage 4 restrictions will be extended longer, and I feel like society would have to adapt to a new lifestyle.
Technology helped people stay connected.
I'm doing lots of things which I neglected previously. For example, I'm spending more time with computer and of course SMSing more to my grandchildren.
But only so much.
I find that I don't want to see my friends over video calls because screen fatigue is making me avoid that.
More recently, as numbers dropped into double figures, people began allowing themselves to think about life after lockdown and how the experience has changed them.
One thing that has personally helped me to have, I guess, a little bit of certainty is knowing that there is this baby on the way for us. We had our 12-week scan this week, which really brought some joy.
I don't think that the world is ever really going to go back to the way that it was. And mostly I'm worried about the fact that I don't know what the world's going to be like.
I think that our lives will never be the same. Everyone's going to be different when we go back. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we're yet to find out, but our lives, they've been changed by this event. I call it BC and AC. Instead of before Christ, it's before COVID and after COVID. I'm hoping AC will come soon.
How powerful is that? She summed it up very well, that we're never going to go back to normal life we will go back to normal, but it will not be the same as it was pre-COVID. And as he mentioned, when people are mentioning, before Christ and after Christ, then people would now be mentioning, before COVID, oh, was that before COVID or after COVID? So we are living toward a very, very historical time. This time will always be mentioned that there was a plague, there was a pandemic called COVID-19, and during this time, this is what happened. There will be pictures, there will be videos which will be shown for generations to come. People will be talking about this period, the period that we are going towards. And there were some very good messages there, but I like the last one. Such a young girl, but even then, such a mature outlook to life and the ways that whatever the life may be after COVID-19, but it will never be the same as it was before that. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I need to say goodbye for today. Until tomorrow, be good and remain safe.